Welcome, my friends. Welcome to Tech Mobility's Controlling the Mind and the Machine podcast. Super pumped because today's guest is going to give you some interesting stuff to think about. When I hear the words changing the pace, like switching it up, this lady does it. Okay. She actually owns this company called Culturally Intelligent, and they consult with businesses, but she's also an educator, and they teach people about, this is what kind of blew my mind up a little bit. She talks about these 10 important values that each of us have that we probably haven't thought about, but when they're broken, we got issue. We got shit to talk about. So I never really thought about it. I mean, when she was going through it, I was like, yeah, like I absolutely believe that stuff. And it wasn't until she kind of like forced me to think about the things that I care about that it made sense why I have so many like triggers when I'm around certain types of people who believe certain types of things or behave certain types of ways. So I really like that. So stay tuned. That's coming up. I recorded a few weeks ago, but it's so relevant right now because a lot of you are ready for change. And you're looking for some, like actionable steps. You're looking for someone to kind of like point you in that direction. And I think that this gal will definitely do it for you. Okay. Couple updates. Website, I fucked up. I don't know technology, so I'm really sorry. So the website is down right now. If you need to contact me, reach out to Erica@tacmobility.net. And I'll talk with you. We'll get it all figured out. But yeah, I've got these online training courses that are coming up that are going to be post certified. Why did I say post? Like I'm from Canada. Did you hear that? I got stuck in my mouth. Post. They are post certified. So you'll be able to take that and it'll count for your training. How amazing is that? Okay, so something super cool happened on Thursday. I got to go down to some of the protests that are happening. And one side of the street was Black Lives Matter, and the other side was Back the Blue. It was really wild. It was really wild to see my town that is considered, I don't know, people make fun of it, and they're like, they call it the Gilbert. It's Gilbert. It's a little affluent. It's a little bougie sometimes. So it was just really interesting to see that going down. And what really made me disappointed in everything was that, you know, the city was reaching out to the town councilman going like, what do we need to do to get this to end? And I'm like, man, people are looking for change. Like, and it's shitty that it's come to that. But like, at some point, some police department has got to just like take some steps. It's going to be so weird, I'm sure, because policing has looked a certain way for ever, really. I mean, it's only had to become more aggressive with the types of crimes that are out there. So it'll definitely be quite the challenge for whatever police department chooses to take that on. But I believe in you guys. I know you can fucking do it. But anyways, it was really wild to see them posted up like that. But then to also just see all the police officers that were just like out there doing overtime, hot as shit. It was so fucking hot. And I'm looking at them going, and they've got all this shit on. Plus they're on edge because you've got both sides of the street fucking yelling dumb shit at each other. And you know what's really unfortunate about all of that is that both sides had some really powerful things to say about change that's necessary, and both sides both had people who were able to articulate some of the issues or concerns that their specific community is facing, but like that all just gets silenced. And oh God, protesting is different than what that was. And it was really, you know, there's an opportunity there. There's an opportunity, and I'm glad to fucking be a part of what change looks like where I'm from. So both groups totally let me hijack their PA system, and I got to talk to everybody, you know, in this kind of like mass way about channeling that energy towards supporting programs like TAC Mobility, which supports officers who are tired and stressed out working these overtime shifts, you know, like for these riots and protests that it haven't stopped. Like anyways, so it was really, really cool. Both sides had people that were on board to meet somewhere in the middle and start having intelligent conversations. And not that they're not intelligent, but they're willing to have vulnerable conversations. Let me put it that way. Let me fucking rephrase that. People who are willing to have vulnerable conversations, that shit's always going to win. So I'm super pumped to be a part of that. Okay. What else? Oh, one thing I did want to say was I thought it was interesting that there were multiple people from both sides that could not verbalize, could not articulate what they felt the issues were. I'm like, listen, I'm going to town council. I'm going to bypass the police because the police literally respond to what's happening in the city. Like this is government. There's just this low-hanging fruit that everyone can swat at. But like, I'm going to bypass them and go to the town and say, some of these things need to change. What does that look like for you? And some people were like, yeah, like I'm here to help the movement, and we can't stand for this, and we have had enough, and, but then when I said, okay, but like specifically, what have you had enough of? Or like, what specifically needs to change? Or like, what specifically are you concerned about changing? And, and that's kind of where they were stumped. So I walked away going, man, I really want to know what it is that I stand up and believe for. So that's why I really think that this session with Renee will be helpful, because she breaks down these 10 values that we sort of all intuitively or subconsciously know and sort of judge the world by without even knowing that we do it. So when it comes to self-awareness and being able to control the mind, these things go hand in hand. Okay. So I think that's really it. It's all about conflict resolution, which is your guys' favorite. All right. So yeah, without further ado, let's welcome Renee. Here we go. Yeah, she's fantastic. Okay, my friends, I have a super special guest with me today. Her name is Renee Bhatti-Klug. She is go ahead and say hey.
Hi.
So Renee is the founder and trainer at Culturally Intelligent Training and Consulting, and they provide cultural intelligence training through the lens of compassion. And she's also an international educator at ASU College out here. So the reason that I have Renee on today is because she has a really unique job. She goes into companies and shows them how to become more inclusive. How did you get into that? Because that seems like a very evolved thing, right? That's pretty new.
It is. So thank you so much, by the way, Erica, for having me on here today.
My pleasure.
I started off as a lecturer in English. I've been teaching university students since 2001, September 11th. In New York was my first day of teaching. And so that was kind of my calling, and international students were a big part of that mission. And then when I came to ASU, we have the largest public we are the largest public institution to host international students. And so they wanted somebody with practical experience, theoretical knowledge, to come in and train faculty and staff. And so that started about 5 years ago. And that's where I kind of learned how to do this. My doctoral work is in increasing cultural intelligence in university faculty. And then when other people started finding out what I was doing, I decided to kind of pick up this side hustle of cultural intelligence or culturally intelligent training and consulting, which I just started in March. And on a limited basis, I provide training for companies.
I love that. I think that it's really important. It's an important part of the conversation right now. And I wanted to bring you in because it's a new thing, not just for the world, but it's like incredibly new for law enforcement as a whole to even, one, be told that maybe that their version of inclusivity was not, didn't meet the goal. And so now I think that like departments are going like, hey, what can we do different? And this is kind of like a, baby steps kind of thing. And it's a sensitive type of thing. But I think that people are ready to hear just some things that they didn't know about what it means to be inclusive. Because for me, at least, I think when someone tells me that I need to be inclusive of someone, I think, well, what am I not doing? That's my immediate response to that. Is that normal?
Yeah, I think people do tend to get defensive because nobody wants to know that they're doing something wrong. But I think that what I try to base my work in is the lens of compassion. Now, let's not criminalize anybody. Let's not criminalize ourselves or any sort of diverse other. Let's determine what it means to be inclusive, why diversity actually matters. And more than anything, the reason why cultural intelligence is so important to me and to my work is because it really is a measure of personal accountability. So regardless of whether or not you are working with people who, culture here, when I embrace it, is all of the diversity that we can fold into who we are. It can be generational, it can be international, in different communities that we either interact with or don't even understand. And so we take that personal accountability to say, look, I want to be the best person I can. I want to move into management. Well, research says that people who are the best and most effective managers have the highest levels of cultural intelligence because it's our ability to interact effectively. So I could even
the ability to interact effectively, like that's so specific.
Right, it is, and it could be. You might say, "Well, I don't work with anybody from a different country." Well, are you an extrovert? Do you work with introverts? Because that is diversity. A way that extroverts and introverts could learn to communicate better with each other. So it could be any.
I see, yeah.
Diversity means anybody who thinks, acts, behaves, looks differently than you might. Internal processors versus external processors. Managers.
Dude, totally. That's, yeah.
Think about even myself. I'm an extroverted external processor. When I was teaching, do you know how, especially when I was younger, do you know how often I relied on my extroverted external students to kind of guide classroom discussions with me? That's not fair, because how many of my introverted internal processors think valuable to say that I just didn't give them time to say?
That I think is, and I never thought about it like that. And of course that's true. Like if I think about that in my personal relationship, my boyfriend, he is an internal processor. He wants a few minutes to think about something. I don't have minutes. I have seconds, milliseconds, and it's totally not fair. And it's one of and then I end up making it something that it's not, if I'm not aware that he just needs time, it has nothing to do with me.
Correct.
So that this is the whole, so guys and gals that are listening, this is the important part. This is the purpose of some of this training that is crucial to your department is not that it's about coddling people this is about being more effective and in the process you just have to do some learning. So tell me about what does that look like when you have like a brand new company that's just like culturally intelligent? What?
Well, the first thing that any of us, I think, needs to do, and that I do first, is listen. I listen to what the company wants. Who are they? Where are they facing struggle? Why do they want more training in this way? Is it because something has occurred and they're, for lack of a better word, damage controlling? Or are they being preemptive about this? And are they just trying to go deeper in the process? And so depending on what their needs are, I come in and I start with general training on what cultural intelligence is, looking at our values and how those really play a in who we are and how we behave. And that really, they make up who we are. And by recognizing that our values are not good or bad, they are, and they are determined a lot by some of our cultural backgrounds. I have this particular stance on this value, and this person who I am super annoyed with, turns out that I'm annoyed because they are approaching this value from a different perspective. They're on the opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to the value of, let's say, time. Maybe I'm always on time, and that means I'm always early. And this person is chronically 1 minute late, and that's annoying to me. And I feel offended, I feel disrespected, I feel all of these things, and I'm internalizing all of this anger at this person who I think hates me, or hate might be a strong word. Feelings, right? And turns out this person's from a culture that, hey, you got 15 minutes before you're late. So being somewhere a minute after is actually kind of early.
Yeah.
That person meant no disrespect to you at all.
Right.
And so you think about all of the things that we do, that you were even saying it, this Renee Brown talks about the stories we make up.
Oh, I'm a fucking story maker. Like, I will write a goddamn book within a second.
Right. And same here. And so my husband...
Share the storytelling, because I think that's like a thing that a lot of people may be familiar with, but I don't know that a lot of police have heard it in this frame of reference. So explain the storytelling.
Telling a story, what Brene Brown does, and she's a... vulnerability researcher. She looks at shame, which of course is everybody's favorite topic to think about, but she really makes it palatable for a lot of people. But anyway, what she talks about is that so often, so in that case of time, I feel offended, I'm making up a story that this person doesn't like me, all of these kinds of things. And so instead of asking that person, hey, I've noticed that you're arriving a minute or two late, you make up a story about why they're doing that they don't like being here, they don't like you, they're lazy, all sorts of, and a lot of times it's a very negative story that we make up either about them or about ourselves. Instead of owning up to the fact that you're feeling whatever you're feeling and saying, hey, I'm gonna say something about this. And that is where I come in a lot with management, and I teach management how to have those conversations. And because the basis of cultural intelligence is emotional intelligence. Can we own how we're feeling about something?
Yeah.
Our responses be effective in terms of diffusing instead of escalating. And I know that is familiar to law enforcement.
Well, and I think that so one hurdle that I don't think that police officers will have, that a lot of people sort of, they have some trial and error with and kind of back and forth with, is I'm just going to say something. Like, cops don't have any... You guys have like practice using your voices, walking up to situations that you're uncomfortable with. So already you've got this like hand up here where you can... This part is easy. So once you start to learn how to have that emotional intelligence, like Renee's talking about, that's when what you're doing then becomes effective, instead of you fucking explode and you talk to the wrong person, you get mad at your boss, or you say something to a person and that escalates the situation, right?
Yeah. And by nature of being police officers, by having the badge, by being on the scene, it automatically puts whoever's in even if the person is innocent and like wouldn't hurt a fly, that person automatically has this sense, we call it an amygdala hijack, which is like their trigger. The amygdala is the fear or flight or freeze part of the brain. And when we are triggered, whether it's through fear, anger, being offended, being in trouble because I'm getting pulled over because I'm going 80 and I'm 40, which is me, by the way.
Her name is Renee. She parks at ASU.
Our level of emotional intelligence will say, oh my goodness, so I'm feeling this thing. Am I going to go faster and avoid this cop? Am I going to pull over and start crying? All of these kinds of things. Or am I going to start fighting? We both have on our respective ends the ability to diffuse a situation. And so it's important for law enforcement to know their presence sometimes can create that environment where people might be automatically scared or automatically defensive.
Yep.
That is not the police officer's fault. That's a broader story that maybe our culture is telling.
Yes.
About police officers.
Can we pause there for a second and just officers listening, hear that it's a bigger than you thing. It's a down the road solution. And right now we're kind of in that interim space, or you guys are in that interim space where there's not a ton of solutions. It just is what it is. And there's we're just in the work, but it's a bigger issue that right now you don't have control over.
Right. But they do. That's the thing that I'm arguing. They not have control over the greater story.
Yeah.
And they might not be one of those law enforcement officers who are committing kind of the acts that we're seeing nationwide, but they can present the counter story. They can be the most culturally intelligent officer who, when they walk into a situation, it diffuses, and they create a culture of inclusivity. They create a culture of nonviolence, or whatever it is that they want to do, where, hey, look, we are going to do the best to do what we were called to do, which is to protect and serve.
Yeah. And when Renee says nonviolence, I think that kind of triggers I think not a good emotion in cops, but I think it's important to remember that when we hear people say that, it's an invitation. It's going to feel like an attack, but it's an invitation to go, well, I do feel that way. I'm not trying to go to work and get into a fight, right? That's not the goal. So when someone says nonviolence, you can let it mean whatever that means to them, but know that you guys are pushing for a different type of job. It's taken a long time. And so this is that baby step in realizing that it can be different. I love that.
Yeah, that's good. In no way mean to trigger anybody by using that language.
Yeah.
But in terms of the general narrative, which is saying it's whoever it is, it's automatically going to be a violent result. That doesn't have to be the story, because it's not necessarily the entire story. And what I'm trying to say is that, yes, there have been cases
story
that have revealed this, particularly on video, if we're talking about what's happening right now in contemporary culture. But that's certainly not all. And there was recently on video a police officer who arrived on a scene where somebody called the police because some kids were playing basketball in the street. And the police officer came up, he's like, hey, so there was a call, you guys are being kind of loud, or the dribbling was loud, I don't know. And you know what? The police officer started playing basketball with them.
Right.
That's just awesome. And that probably, for the amount of times I've been pulled over, which is many, because I am police officers, I have never had a violent encounter. I've had empathetic encounters with most throughout my 25 years of driving.
Yeah.
Right? A couple of them, maybe could have been slightly kinder, but that was their personality. They were annoyed with me for driving so fast. And so, that's the thing. I understand that there's a much greater story.
Yeah.
One that's being told now. It doesn't have to be the end of the book.
So what I love about Renee is she is really committed to helping people see their blind spots in a really non-judgmental way. And I think that that's what law enforcement needs right now, because it's such I actually have so much compassion for what police officers are experiencing now. The ones who really do want to change or really do believe in themselves and really do show up and try and do a good job and go above and beyond. Like, I think that you're the type of individual that they need to be aware of so that they can start to make change, because there's going to be a lot of mistakes that you make in this, right? Like, that's a normal part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We all do. We are all, like, the reason why I mentioned the amygdala, and I'm sure most police officers have taken a look at this, is because this is our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. There's another one where you just that response. And so thinking even about it, that when police officers, whether or not they're brand new or are veterans, if they go into a situation that they have never been into, they too are going to be triggered.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter what kind of professional you are, or how great you are, or how much you
mm-hmm.
love you are going to have a human response.
Yeah.
I want to take a look at what's happening in this nation. The much broader picture is very much people having human responses, and maybe those responses not necessarily having, maybe not being listened to as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that I started wondering, which is what got me into this work, was I'm like, man, I wonder if these fight or flight responses, these automatic responses that cops or that anybody is likely to go into, really, really look and enforce the idea that all cops are racist, right? So I say that to say that perception is reality. And the last podcast that I had, that officer said that there's this part of acknowledging that people's perception is what's real, and that you have to take a little bit of ownership of that and go, okay, we've got to change some stuff. What does that look like for us? And I think that this is a good juicy step for it. Is realizing that you're not, it is what it is. Like, and there's going to be a lot of people that pass judgment on you making those mistakes, but there are some people that are in the middle, like culturally intelligence consulting, right? That teaches this type of training that is there for the mistakes, is there for the vulnerability.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, you were saying, one person is like the other, no matter if they're from the same unit, if any of these kinds of things. And I think so often, we talk about profiling, and sometimes it's helpful to say, okay, this group, when they're coming in my case, when I deal with different student groups that come in, sometimes it's good to have cultural background about these students to understand how we can serve them better. But when it comes to the point that we are judging them by that,
mm-hmm.
we're criminalizing them, we might be expecting them to have certain behaviors,
mm-hmm.
because cultural backgrounds, that then becomes the problem. And I think the same goes for us when we look at police officers, that, hey, just because you've seen however many incidents you've seen or experienced, doesn't make that true of this officer. And that is 100%. And at the same time, even if the officers have in mind, okay, well, this neighborhood has this reputation, or this group of people has this reputation, recognizing, and this is, I think, why cultural intelligence is so important, you understand those things about cultures, neighborhoods, people you're interacting with, but you treat every person as a valid and valuable individual. You recognize their intrinsic value. That they are not.
Because you're not recognizing the culture. You're seeing past, or you're seeing yourself, or you're understanding how that culture is similar to.
Yes, you recognize that they are part of the culture they're from. But they are the entirety of that. And I think.
I love that. They're say that again. They're a part of the culture, but they're not the entire. Say it. What?
Yeah, they're part of the culture, but the culture doesn't make up entirely who they are. So let's say a culture has a reputation of X behavior. If I'm from that culture, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to have X behavior. You've got to get to know me, and I understand one-on-one interaction, or if I, a 5-minute conversation, that's not necessarily possible to get to know everything about me. But if I come if I expect the best from the beginning, right? And if I say, look, I'm going to just pause on this and I'm going to listen and learn before I respond. So often you can have a better result. And you and I talked about this earlier, right? With our partners. If I could just slow my roll and I'd start firing at my partner because he needs 4 minutes to process an idea. And I've learned so much in this, and we've been married 14 years. I have learned now, instead of firing off my mouth, which I am so good at, and then I suffer a month.
Right.
Because of all of the shit that I flew out, right?
Sure.
All hurtful words that I can never take back, that I didn't even mean. I just felt them. And I didn't even, they're awful. And if anybody said that to me, I would never get over it, right? The crap we do to people. And then, but now I'm recognizing, in being married to him and learning, like, just because that's how I am naturally doesn't mean that's how I should be.
Or that you have to be. Yeah.
Or that I have to be.
Yeah.
And so in emotional intelligence, I have learned the last 5 years, and the best 5 years of our marriage have been the last 5 years. I have learned, before I fire off my mouth, I stop and I collect my thoughts.
Yeah.
And I sift through all of the violent ones that want to tell my husband this or that or this or that I would have said before. And like, I this or I that, or you this or you that, all of these things. I go through them in my brain quietly. And I'm like, no, I don't actually I feel that, but I don't actually think that. I don't actually believe that. And then after 3 or 4 minutes, I'm able to come back to the table with collective, rational mind, still feeling angry and hurt by whatever happened, but now being able to say, okay, when this happened, this is how I felt, and let's change this behavior. And then owning the crap that I did, because I certainly contributed to whatever argument, right? So often I think, again, escalating that sort of thing. And in my work, my personal relationships have healed because I've recognized, there's a lot of work I've got to do.
Yeah, like, I think that it's hard to have ownership of your words, but I think when you realize that, one of the things that I want officers to know is not every thought that you have is important. And it's going to seem like that, right? And you even said it, where, like, you have all these, like, violent thoughts or whatever. Yeah, those are there, but, like, the core of what you want is also still there, right? Yeah. It's just covered up by all that other stuff. And officers, this type of stuff that she's talking about, this is part of the journey. This is part of the learning. But as you practice this, right, when you're not in the fucking field and you need to, that's when it becomes these millisecond type of interactions happening in your mind. It's not, okay, I need to pause for 2 minutes. You're in the middle of a fucking shootout. You don't have that time, right? So, like, these things with practice become very, in the same way that you're likely to just, like, shout something out of your mouth that's stupid, and how easy that is to just do it. It's automatic. These good things become automatic too.
Absolutely. And, the research says that, to bring in the neural pathways of our brains, where how we operate our whole life. So my whole life, I had a story that I told myself about who I was, who my husband was, who our relationship was, how we behaved. And that was the rut in my brain that was created. And then as I began to realize, wow, I'm actually making my marriage worse by behaving this way. And I'm driving my husband away and driving myself away by behaving this way. So what I did is before we got into fights, I would own the stuff. And I would I would tell a different story. Like, no, he's this and we're this and this is who I am. Whatever is best for the situation that you're in. So when the next time we were in an escalated situation, like you said, I had already done the work, and the new pathways were formed. And so my automatic instinct wasn't the old behavior, but the new behavior. And it took time. So the first fight was a better fight. And then now, after 5 years we don't really fight anymore because we've both learned these techniques where we're like, oh, I need a minute. Like, oh, what you just said.
Right.
Right? Instead of, bam, and just rushing
toward
it like, Tyson in the ring.
Yeah.
In the 90s, when he was real.
And that's really important too, to recognize like the things that trigger you, right? Because that's the stuff, you know, when I talk to you guys about what are you bringing to an incident that is you, that doesn't need to be there, right? So you said something earlier about values, like there's value. Talk to me about that and how that helps this.
So recognizing where you stand on different values so often is the number one way for you first to understand yourself, and then second to understand other people. And so there, in terms of cultural intelligence, there are 10 values. And I don't know if it's this is, you know, we go through trade this, we take like about an hour to really look at where you stand, and then what that value means, what it looks like in practice.
What are those values? Can you tell them to us?
10 of them. There are in the 10 of them. Let me take a look so I can get through all of them. So there's loyalty. So, and this is huge culturally and specifically, I think, with law.
Yeah.
Are we, if this is the degree to which people perceive themselves as being individual or belonging to larger communities. So family, religious groups, these kinds of things. So you're either independent, and sometimes you can be a mix of both, or you're interdependent. Do you kind of feel like you're your own person and I don't have the same religion as my parents? Or that, hey, who I am is directly related to my family. And loyalty is one. Now, look, loyalty can also go into your career as well, how you feel, where your allegiance is.
This is a big one. Like when you're a hard worker and there's people in your department that aren't, like that can really get underneath your skin. And so to understand that, like, what this says about you is that you're a loyal person, how does that change the conversation? You know what I'm saying?
Well, look at here. So let's say this. Because think about it. You might say, well, I'm more loyal to this team because I stay longer. I stay longer during the day, and you leave at this particular time. So if you look at values and you say, well, hey, wait a minute, listen, you sit down, and let's say we have person A who stays long and person B who cuts out short. And then you take a look at their value of independence and interdependence. And you say to the one person, look, person A feels like the team on which he works or they work is their family. This is my family. This is where I belong. I don't have time. I don't have a stop time when it comes to working with this, right? Whereas the other person says, well, hey, look, I am loyal to this unit, but I have a family that needs me at home, right? And I got to get home, and I have to do that because let's say my partner has to go to work 10 minutes after I get home, right? And so think about the judgment that came in initially. I'm loyal. Well, that person actually is loyal, but that person has multiple loyalties, and they're trying to be loyal to them all. And so sitting down and having a conversation is the thing that's offending me, annoying me, irritating me, making me feel like you're not doing your due diligence because you're cutting out at such and such time.
Yeah.
And then, but you take a look at what else is going on in that person. And then you can say, oh, actually, that person is really loyal, but they're loyal to other things and not just the thing that I'm loyal to.
Yeah.
Which usually is anyway, right? We all have several loyalties. And so that could be one way in which that comes up.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I hope so. And then, this one, power, hierarchy, or equality. The degree to which we prefer leadership to be more fair, like our boss is one of us, or our boss is the boss. And we don't fight the boss. This is
so funny how all this stuff has to do with understanding how much programming is a part of like what programming, right? Because you grow up with your parent being a certain way, and everything that they learn, that's all that they're teaching you, right? It's just everything that they learn, and you grow up knowing what doesn't fit for you.
Yeah.
But because what Renee said, we've got these pathways, these patterns, these familiar ways of living that we just do what's easier. Our brain just does that. So it's so crazy to see how much of this shit goes back to like how we were formed. Like nurture is fucking crazy.
Right? Absolutely. Or if we had a total authoritarian parent who was always on our back, we may be like, I don't want anybody telling me what to do. That might inform why we became going into the career we did. I want to be the person in authority. I'm sick and tired of somebody always breathing down my neck. So this kind of thing. So think about that power shift and think about what that means. So now think about how that might make you feel if somebody challenges your sense of authority.
Yeah, this becomes about like internal fears versus like preference.
Where and you're immediately triggered. I know somebody who the immediate trigger for this person is feeling disrespected. That if there will be a brawl.
That's so crazy. It's like I know people like that where it's just like I don't really care if you just whatever.
Right? Some people are like that, but other people, it will be hands down a knockout.
I don't know any cops like that. That's so weird. None of my friends are like that. None of you type A motherfuckers.
I know. I have several friends like that, and so I have to recognize that, like, my language around that needs to be that if there's a disagreement, it has to be one where they're not feeling personally disrespected, or I'm not challenging them, which is always a good idea. I'm challenging their idea.
I'm telling you, you guys, this shit that we're talking about is literally what it's so fucking new. And I want, oh my God, I wish that the world knew that what you're teaching is brand new ass shit. Cops, y'all are way, she's like, I know, right? But like cops, you guys are so far behind everybody else in terms of learning this stuff. Like this is like the world, I think, has, like you said, 5 years going into 10 years, right? Like first kind of like decade. Y'all, this is your first 6 months.
Yeah.
New shit. So good. So good.
Because, look, I promise you, if you embrace these things at work, it'll roll into your personal life. And I guarantee that your relationship with your partner, if you have children, your parents, will they become easier? No, but your ability to handle
what you need from them fucking changes. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So look, there are people in my life who I will never expect them to change, but I have changed. And you know what? And so in certain cases, there are certain people who are not in my life anymore because putting up a boundary is a compassionate act toward myself.
Right, because like I don't need to, because you don't always need to feel that way,
I don't need to babysit you. I have 3 children of my own. You do not need to be my 4th.
Yep.
Or 5th.
I think the application here from the stories that I'm hearing, you guys, is it's not your favorite thing to hear the word no. You don't love it, but the last episode, check it out, episode 9, the guy who does, Officer Dustin, who does the jiu-jitsu training, he's like, if I hear the word no, I know that that's not, like me getting someone to comply is not dependent on them saying yes to me. So when I hear the word no, I'm not like, well, fuck this, and, I like, do all the things. Recognizing if you need someone that you're interacting with, an individual, if you need them to say yes in order for you to feel like you can be in control and de-escalate a situation, then chances are that you're going to not get what you want and things are going to backfire because, like Renee said earlier, understanding that the perception of your uniform and just that situation in general, whether they provoked the contact at all or initiated it, it's still a hurdle. So if you're waiting for someone else to step out of their fight or flight and be reasonable, just know that that's probably not going to go as effective as it could. If you realize that you still have options, you're still with all of your mental faculties, and you still know that you're in control of the situation, that's where you get that freedom to start making your own decisions instead of letting your brain fucking take over and decide for you, and then you have to work your way out of that. So So what? Okay, so let's get back to the list. So we've got
More values, yes. So the next is a good one. It's your how you feel about uncertainty or risk. Are you adaptable? Are you inflexible? So this is the degree to which people feel comfortable taking risks. And I would, for the most part, a lot of people in law enforcement probably are pretty adaptable to high risk situations, right? But maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe this is.
So here's where I would say yes and no from the things that I experience. And officers, please send me the comments if I'm incorrect here. But I think that they are adaptable in terms of they are survivors and they're very resourceful. But I think because of the mindset that's been created where it's you take orders and you do this, I think that's where some of the inflexibility becomes in where the world wants to take law enforcement is it's going, nope, we are doing this because they're still under that pressure going like, you don't have the flexibility to decide these things on your own. So I think that here's where the tricky part comes in and here's where there might be a disconnect with people coming in and telling you guys solutions or suggestions to try. You'll have to figure out like what works, where you have freedom. So you may not have all the liberation to do the things that Renee or whoever consults with your department might say. But there are areas that you do have some freedom. So it's finding that stuff because there are some inflexibilities in your mindsets.
Yeah, but risk taking is another thing. I mean, think about partners in law enforcement, whether you're private or personal partners. You know, if one person's a risk taker and you're not, that's going to create conflict. Or depending on where you are. And so that's something that's really, it's good to recognize what your value is, what it is that is being expected of you. If your boss expects everybody to be high risk takers and you're not a risk taker, you're going to have conflict in that workspace.
Or in your personal relationships, you know, yes. If you're a type A person, you most likely don't have a type A partner. I mean, maybe
if you're in my relationship when we're both type A.
You know, but it's not super common. Like you know, the whole opposites attract thing is true for sure, right? So think about what she's saying, and I think that this is where if you're finding it difficult to relate this to your job, begin relating this to your relationships, because here's where if your partner is very security conscious and they need information and they need whatever, and you are feeling destructive because you're having an adrenaline dump and you need to feel better, or you're just spending money because you need to feel better, understanding that your partner's like core security is information or financial security is helpful in knowing and not making something what it's not.
So good. And I even think about this when you are, let's take partners and money.
Mm-hmm.
You are your value of risk taking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've worked with entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And spouses, and if you are the spouse of a high risk entrepreneur and you have a low threshold for risk, there are going to be major problems. There might be major problems
because you're afraid.
Because you're so afraid.
Yeah.
You're living in abundance, or you're living in total lack because a startup just went under. And that might be what makes your partners thrive. So often, a lot of times, you know, if you are an entrepreneur and have that high risk, or you're not, keep this in mind when you're entering into partnerships, whether romantic or otherwise. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times, sometimes it's good to have that devil's advocate kind of speaking in your ear, like, is this really you want to or sometimes they could be the people holding you back. And so it's so
yeah,
and there's no one size fits all. But again, going back to the root of where you are in that value can so often help you. I mean, this is like free therapy.
This is so helpful, you guys.
So the next one is competition. Are you competitive or cooperative?
No, cops are not competitive. This is
yeah, is it the degree to which people prefer to work alone or in groups? So this is even that. So who thrives? You know, this is kind of going back to childhood. If you were assigned to group work, were you the one who got everything done for everybody else? That probably means that you are competitive. I didn't want to work with anybody. Or you the type where if you are told to work by yourself, you can't because you need other people to get you going.
That's me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the first.
I need a fucking hype team. Come, someone. I need a cheerleader.
Yeah, and I'm the first where it's like sometimes I've got to be taught how to work in. I mean, I'm good in working in groups, but I'm more or less like, no, I'm just gonna take this, and it's control. I'm gonna take this boat, and I'm gonna learn how to. And I don't care if you're a professional. I'm gonna learn, and I'm gonna do it. And
get in the back seat.
And so it's good for us to know that about ourselves. Because again, going back to who offends us. Well, that person, you're not a team player, right? That's an accusation you've made about somebody who might just feel more comfortable, and maybe this person does need to learn. I'm not saying that if this is a problem that you don't have to change, but again, it's dynamic. There's no, but this is how you figure it out. Oh, this person actually really thrives independently. And think about bosses.
Yeah.
How often, if you've got a team player or somebody who is cooperative, working all alone, and you're wondering why that person isn't getting anything done, it's likely not their fault, but your fault for putting him in that role. Right? As a management, I know. Well, obviously they're held accountable for taking a job that they didn't know how to do. Right. But there needs to be a restructuring there.
Yeah, and here's where like that leadership and every person can be a leader, right? Even if you're patrol, even if you're at the bottom, like being a leader of yourself and knowing what you can get from certain people, that literally is how you make your life work for you. So know who to go to, know when the fuck to leave, know when to go to another department. There's so many options. There's so many things that you can lead.
So are you a high risk taker, Erica?
Yeah.
Look, okay, so really quickly, what you just said, all of those qualities, knowing when to leave, leaving, those are all values of high-risk takers. There are people who will stay in a job for 50 years.
That was my ex-husband, yeah.
And break their back over it, be completely depressed because they're afraid. And there's nothing with that. I mean, we might think that, but that person, they can't.
Yeah.
And so here's why this is so important for entire teams. Because so often, if we have people who are not doing their work, if we keep hiring, we've hired 10 people for this job in the last year. Something's up. I don't know what it is. You could look at anyone.
They need more support maybe, or they need more encouragement. They need more direction. They need someone to be on them more.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the 10 people you have been putting into a very high risk taking job are low risk takers. So,
yeah.
Of course, they would all be leaving so that's why management has to recognize this. What kinds of characteristics of a person need to belong to this job, and then are you putting your best friend into this job? That's another value we'll look at in a second. Or are you actually finding the person who fits these qualities to make it a good fit?
Yep. Or are you willing to take up the slack if you decide to bring somebody else, right? Like if you bring someone in that's not like you talked about your friend, if they're not the right person, but you know the work that needs to get done, it's knowing, God, you guys, this is having as much information and data as possible to have the most successful outcome possible.
Correct. 100%. You should tweet that. And so it's true. And the next value we talked about is time. Are you strict or are you flexible? And this is the degree to which people view time and commitments as being either like holy rather than negotiable.
Yes.
I'm not going to budge on it.
Preference.
Cancel because this other thing came up, right? So you've got your fear of missing out, your FOMO people who might be more negotiable, and your people who are the what's the lack of the word?
I was going to say reformers.
The responsible ones who are like, nope, I don't care if you have tickets to who's
we had plans.
It's me, right? You just got front row tickets to whatever. Oh man, I told my friend I would go to dinner with her. I can't take those tickets. I gotta go to dinner, right? And there are people who are like that. It's good for you to recognize who and where they feel. There are people who, if like for me, I started off in corporate work and I was like, nope, I cannot be beholden to an 8 to 5 clock. It drains my lifeblood, because I can get my stuff done by 11 a.m. if you let me. And if I have to sit at my desk until 5, we've got some major problems. So for me, I need that flexibility of time, if you will. And then I had to choose a career that allowed for that. The next is context, direct or indirect, which is this is an interesting one with international cultures. And so looking at the ethnic cultures that make up this is important, how we communicate. This is the degree to which people prefer to communicate explicitly, directly, and clearly. I mean what I say what I mean. My yes is a yes, my no is a no. Versus indirectly, emphasizing harmony and saving face. So let me give you an example of what this looks like. So I am East Indian by ethnicity. I'm American, but my dad immigrated here in his 20s, and all of his family is here. And so the family members who are from India, they tend to be more indirect in communication, because it's a way of honoring. It's a way of saving face. It's a way of my respect to you. So let's say I'm inviting family members over, and I say, hi, can you come over Saturday night for dinner? And they say yes, but can we do it Sunday instead? Are they coming Saturday or not? Or can they come Saturday or not?
No. Right.
They said yes because they didn't want to offend me and give me the idea that they don't want to come over. They do want to come over, but they can't Saturday because of whatever. But Sunday they're free. And this happens, I will say that I will come into actual nationalities right now. Western thinkers tend to be more, they think they're direct, but I'll give you the counter narrative there in just a second. And many other Eastern cultures, let's say people from Asian nations, a lot of people from India, the Middle East, they tend to emphasize that harmony. And so sometimes you have to recognize that in your communication with them. Now, Americans, we think we're direct, but think about how we give constructive feedback. It's a sandwich. It's a compliment, then it's the truth, and then it's another compliment. Right? It's a criticism sandwich.
That's how I need to be talked to. Sandwich my ass.
And so we're actually not very direct. And so, but it's a book called The Culture Map by Erin, Erin Meyer. And she talks to leaders in this about how to give critique. Because there are some cultures that if you start with the compliment and then go into the critique, nobody will hear the critique. You never see change. And other cultures, if you start with the critique and go into the compliment, they will fly away. They will be so disheartened and so crushed under the weight of the first that they won't even hear the compliment. You've got to get to know the personal and maybe even the broader culture of the people with whom you're working with. This is really good for parents, for managers, for basically people who talk to other So, it's a really important value to know and understand. The next is identity. Are you a person who is more of a doer or a beer? So this is the degree to which we gauge of our lives and senses of ourselves on what we do rather than who we are and how we live. So is my identity in my work, or is it just in who I am? I don't need to have all of these externals to define who I am. I am.
Yeah. My boyfriend's like that. He can just sit there and just be enjoying whatever's around him. I'm like, we gotta go. We got a list. We gotta do. Yeah. And he's like, baby, sit down. I'm like, but then what do we get done? He's like,
yeah, exactly.
We don't need to.
This also is important, and this sometimes can arguably be cultural too. Think about it, Nike, just do it. Think about some of the messages that our culture sends us about what quality of life actually looks like, or capitalist societies tend to say, money, this kind of thing. Have researchers like Renee Brown who have come out recently, and I have to say last 10, 20 years, who have been saying, whoa, let's lower our role. Let's re-engage the self. Let's come, we have yoga practices, we have mindfulness practices.
We have jujitsu.
Yeah, bringing that balance back. And so This, again, is very personal, but sometimes it can be dictated. Culture can tell us what we're supposed to think, and we might be like, no, or yes. Fairness. This one, coming back, I mentioned this earlier. This is, are we universalistic or particularistic? And
are we universalistic?
Or yes, so this is the degree to which people believe standards should be applied fairly to everyone, universally, rather than making exceptions for friends and family, particularly.
Ooh.
Huge one.
I'm a okay. That's
So
good. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, look. Let's say I have a business, and I've hired. This is not the greatest example, but I'll roll with it. So, and I've hired somebody externally, and I've hired somebody from my friend group, and the person who's my friend is not doing a good job because of XYZ, but I'm afraid to fire them because they're my friend. But if anybody else was doing the job, if it wasn't my friend, they'd be out.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about how we relate to others and whether or not we're bringing a standard of fairness.
Yeah.
And this is, I teach how to do this, like within the academic
This
context.
is a good one, because I'm not very good with fairness. I'm not a...
And this is why we have to, especially in business and even personally, have we made our standards explicit? Do we know?
Yeah, this is a good leadership thing to consider. This is a good one to chew on.
It is critical. So in the academic context, have teachers say, okay, this is my expectation, this is the point value. So then I'm not grading this person higher because the ideas were better. Or not better, the ideas were more in line with what I think. If these two students have presented their work in a way that I have already defined, here is what I expect of you, then regardless of whether or not I agree or disagree, the thoughts expressed in the paper, I can give them equal grades if they showed equal quality.
Yep, this is good information for why you might have people who work under you that don't go above and beyond for you, or that may think of you a certain way, or you kind of get a rough they're rough with you or whatever. They may look at your practices as a leader and recognize that you are not a fair person and may just be over your shit. So that's a good check. That's a good one.
It's a really good one. And this one takes a lot of ownership. We all take ownership of this because we don't want to admit that I'm treating this person better than that person because maybe I feel closer to this person, or we're pals, or I feel a sense of loyalty to this person. I mean, it goes deep. Next, there are two more: emotions. And this one is so good in the workplace and in personal. And all of them are good in work and in personal spaces. But are you more demonstrative or neutral? So this is the degree to which we express our emotions openly.
Oh, God. I could fucking answer that right out of the chute.
Right? If I am with somebody and they're a little bit more neutral and they're not expressing what they should be expressing, again, go back to the storytelling. They don't like me. I probably love them more.
What's wrong with their values? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Or why are they so boring? Or why are you so shut down? I mean, all of this judgment, just because they're not telling, they're a little bit more poker faced, or maybe they're feeling it on the inside, but they're not necessarily. And they might be thinking, man, why does that person have to tell me everything that's on their mind at all times, right? Why can't they just put a lid on it?
Politics.
All right. Well, yeah.
Okay, y'all. Okay, you need to just remember.
Think about, what if your boss is more neutral and you are creating all sorts of stories in your head that you're not doing a good job because your boss hasn't expressed overt happiness or sadness. There's no expression because your boss is neutral. They're just an even-keeled person. I'm not saying that people who are expressive are not even.
This is how my ex-husband was, and it wasn't until after a relationship that I was able to recognize that that's who he is as a person, but I took it a certain way and created a whole history of arguments over it because I refused to look deeper and accept that he didn't need that type of response or interaction with the world that I do. Yeah.
See, and that's so good. And think about what may have gone differently.
Oh, totally. God, it's like, man, the ability to understand yourself first gives you the ability to understand the relationships around you so that you can be the one that's in control of them. Like, not in like a narcissistic way, but you know what I'm saying? Like, deciding and being able to make those decisions however you choose to do them, whether they're bold or small, you have the information to make those decisions, and you're confident in yourself and knowing who you are, that you can make those decisions because you're not afraid to be alone or you know, fucking Brene Brown, like braving the wilderness. You're not afraid, and this is important when y'all are talking about. So it's important that you guys are the ones to change your culture. And I just talked with the department yesterday about this. He's like, well, you know, I think that communities of color, like, why aren't they doing this? And blah, blah, blah. And I go, right, but you're not going to be the one to fucking teach them that. You don't understand the community. You don't understand the nuances. So you can waste your breath all you want to. So here's where it becomes beneficial and crucial to learn your emotions and learn what you're about, is because there's going to be some stuff that you hear throughout your career or that you see throughout your career that may not be fireable, but they're things that you want to call out that don't sit right with you or don't feel right, or know that they make your job more difficult as a whole or individually, that you want to speak up about. But because the culture doesn't exist yet where you're able to just verbalize these things, this is that stepping stone where you begin to learn to be okay.
Yeah. So good. And this one is interesting. And I think another ownership for both ends, whether you're demonstrative or neutral. And I think you and I could probably be
Oh, 100%. I will, like, if you're neutral, like, get the fuck, like, I remember when I was a Christian, I'm like, God hates lukewarm people. Get out of here. Like, I don't have any tolerance for it. And I recognize that in myself because I want to,
right? But I've had to learn, like, I don't have to always tell everybody what I think. Mm-hmm. I don't have to show when I'm sad or happy. Like, not everybody cares. Not everybody needs to care. Not everybody deserves my business. And then at the same time, my husband is way more neutral. He has learned to open up more. He has learned to be more demonstrative. And so we've kind of had to balance each other out. Like, all right, I could be a little less vocal. And I don't like saying emotional or things like that, because I think we're all emotional. I think it's
expressive. Yeah.
Right? And so, and then finally there's focus. And, this one is so important. And this one, I wish I had learned about myself much earlier than I did. Are you a unitasker or a multitasker? Do you prefer to focus on one task at a time versus many? And it turns out I have a lot of things going on, but I'm a horrible multitasker. Most people technically are, but a lot of people have a lot of things happening in order for them to get any of them done. Other people, they have to finish one thing before they move to the next. Otherwise, things start to fall apart really quick. Mm-hmm. This is really, really important for you to recognize about yourself, because this allows you to make a boundary. If your boss says, hey, can you take on this extra project? No, and here's why. I'm already doing A, B, and C. If I do D, A, B, and C will not get done. Can I either, and you got to negotiate that. And you as a boss, you need to recognize if you have people who are not doing enough, it might be because you're not giving them enough to do. They might be the multitaskers. They might be the ones who flourish under a lot of projects. And this takes a lot of self-awareness. I recognize that. But if you really want to grow your team, you got to get to know your team. Mm-hmm. You got to get to know yourself, and you got to figure out what these projects demand. And recalibrate. One of the best things about emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence and data-informed decisions is that we don't just say, well, in 1981, research, 1981, people are going to be 40 who were born in 1981 next year.
Okay, hey, whoa, woman.
Look, I turned 40 a long time ago.
Back.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, it's not new. Mm-hmm. That we have to roll with the times. We have to say, okay, look, this may have been the way we did things in 2000. they're not anymore.
Y'all listen to this, because there's so many things. God, that guy that I interviewed the other day, he's talking about the training moves that they learn. So they have 8 hours of required defensive hands-on training every 2 years. And it's their Aikido moves that like the wrist lock stuff. And he goes, for that shit to be effective, you have to practice hours and hours and hours. Like, this shit is outdated as fuck. Like, there's some, you guys, if you don't want people to make policy changes for you, here's where you are the best people to say, look at how outdated this is. We know it's outdated because we have to fucking work around it, and we think it's crazy. We see how much time it's wasting. We see how many resources it's wasting. Look at this better idea. You guys are the best ones to make this stuff happen for yourselves, because you get it. And we don't. Again, people are making these policies that don't understand your job, and your chiefs are going to listen to them because they apply the pressure. So if there's something else that makes sense, here's where all of this is beneficial. Understanding that you can stand alone, understanding what's in your control, understanding who you are, what you can get from other people, what to expect from other people, how to accept things from other people. And you can start being that change that you want to see that makes sense.
That is beautiful, and that is 100% true, that so often other people make decisions for us because we're not willing to rise up in leadership and say, no, here's what works.
Or just in life.
Or in life, absolutely. Like, so many relationships have been, relationships fall apart. You even mentioned it, that, whether or not your relationship in the past, of course, is in the past, but think about what could have been the alternative.
Yeah.
Had you just known better and done better.
Totally.
Oh, and Maya Angelou says, when we know better, we do better. And so how can we do that? Because we are responsible for not necessarily what we know, but what we do. But we are responsible for learning more. And so, I can't know something that I don't know, but you certainly can refuse to learn. You can certainly refuse to listen. You can say, well, whatever, that's not relevant to me, or that's their problem, or we can make up a lot of stories that aren't true, and then guess what, in 20 years we're in the place we are.
And that's what she's saying right now, like, make this about you. Like, be selfish here for a moment and realize that when you refuse to change, think about it in your relationships, right? Outside of the obvious social issues that we have. When you dig your heels in, you're making it difficult for you. Like, it is difficult. I tried explaining this to my son because he's having a hard time just shutting his mouth sometimes. And I'm like, okay, here's what I need you to understand is both of the choices that I'm going to give you are going to be difficult. Both of them are going to be hard. One way, you're going to keep doing it the way that you're doing it, and you're going to keep adding. You're going to dig a deeper hole. You're going to make it harder for yourself to enjoy your life because I'm not going to wait around for you, okay? Just like the world's not. The other choice is that you choose to make different ones, or you start to figure out which ones are different. That is hard and difficult because you're being a pioneer in your own mind, right? But the results are incredibly different. You can either keep running towards the negative, or you can make steps that still seem hard because you are in the negative, but it's working your way out. It's working towards a better, just towards a better, more enjoyable experience where you're in more control. So make this about yourself and realize that this is a tool for you to, if this goes back to that mission that I have of lowering that suicide risk, right? This is where it becomes super, super important to focus in on yourself and learn the shit about yourself. You've learned about other people, right? Your CIT training is about other people. And the disconnect is that you don't know some of this stuff about yourself, or you're just now starting to learn some of this stuff about yourself, right? So this is a really great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the other things that I wanted to touch on before I let you go is we talked last time about a sense of belonging. I realized very early on that the divide between law enforcement and communities of color is people want to belong. Like the root of all this stuff is belonging, right? Even thin blue line, right? I got your 6. It's belonging to someone and feeling safety. So like, how does that play into your training?
Well, the theory of belonging, Baumaster and Leary, if we want to go into the theory specifically, this is actually a universal trait that extends to every single culture around the entire world. There is no human, I will say, except for maybe people who might be psychopathic or sociopathic. All right, so that is the exception to this rule. But for the majority of humans, we have a need to belong. We have to feel like we are connected. I mean, babies who are not held die. Period. I mean, that's just a fact. It's a scientific fact. And so, and we need this sense of belonging. We need to feel seen. We need to feel represented. All of this goes back to where we started: diversity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned my ethnic heritage. I grew up in Phoenix in the 70s and 80s, the best decades. And Barbies were totally blonde hair, blue-eyed, white. And I didn't have any sort of representation when it came to that sort of thing. That didn't start happening until the 90s or 2000s, where dolls started representing the greater community. And it made a huge shift in my sense of belonging, my sense of, oh, I'm not different. Even though I was like the only brown person in my elementary school until 3rd grade, right? And so these kinds of things happen when so many of us feel like we're the only, create a sense of disconnect. It depending on our personality.
That's that us versus them. That's where it starts. It's rooted in insecurity. Yeah.
Yes, and if we feel like the greater population doesn't care, what that does to our psyche.
Yeah, and right, you guys are starting to feel that where you're just like, fuck it, right? Fuck it.
Why should we participate?
Yeah.
If you don't say that we belong, then why should we listen to you?
Dude.
Right? You can't expect us to do what we're doing, to work. Like, let's go back into the employer context. And it gets really dicey in the cultural or the race space, which I respect. But if I don't feel valued by my boss, I'm or I'm going to revolt. I'm going to do one or the other. Yeah. Right? I'm forced to be there, and I can't get out. I'm going to do something to change it. Yeah. Or I'm gonna leave. And so right now, in the greater scheme of things, if I don't feel seen, if I don't feel valued, if I don't feel respected as a person, and if I feel like you are treating that person better than you're treating me, there's going to be a problem. Because now I know that now that I know you're capable of it, and now it feels like you're intentionally. So one of my buddies, we were having like a really like candid conversation. He's an ex-cop, and he was just like, he goes, I mean, all this shit about like taking it out to the rural area. He's like, you don't want to push. These are farm raising or growing middle American citizens who have grown up with guns. Don't force us to choose. And I said, buddy, I hear you. And I want you to understand something is in the same way that you recognize your ability to be pushed so far before you just say, fuck it. That's what we're dealing with. George Floyd was the final fuck it. And now we're just like, I can't believe, well, yeah, it's fucking destructive and it's awful. And I hope that more protesting happens. It's peaceful and effective. But we've gotten to the place where a group of people straight said, fuck it. And I don't want you guys to get there. When I pled with at a police department and I said, what is it going to take? Like, what's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back before officers are just like, fuck it, and there's some rogue officer that just has had enough. Like, it doesn't have to go that direction, because now there's interventions. There's this space that exists right now that you're all in, where you can choose to survive this and look at what that's teaching you and see how you can adapt and change and prove to yourself how resilient you are.
and change this story.
It's true. And it's, again, if we're coming to this idea of diversity and inclusion, that does not mean that you negate who you are.
Yeah.
It means that who you are and who they are, all of you are capable of being seen. That they don't have to morph themselves into who you are, and you don't have to morph yourself into they are.
Yes.
Personal values and still respect the other.
Here's where I find this to be incredibly useful. If you are a trainer, involved in hiring, whatever, you're a higher up, there's this response to, police, you guys are corrupt and blah, blah, blah. And the response is, if you want to be a part of the solution, the door is open. We have all kinds of hiring things and whatever. And an officer said this to me yesterday. And I said, well, but one thing that you have to understand, if that's your goal, is that the culture within police, within law enforcement, is its own fucking ship. And if you don't conform to that culture, whatever that looks like, and that this is going to be specific to your demographic and where you are, location wise. But people, once they come into that, if they don't fit, you push them out just by staying who you are. And just by not changing and recognizing that someone who you want to be a part of the solution doesn't quite fit or doesn't quite understand, right? Because a lot of this stuff is done and there's no why, you just do it and you know that it's there. Okay, so if you want to have a greater representation of the diversity that's in the community that you are enforcing the laws with, you have to consider, does your culture have inclusivity of other cultures so that your solution can happen, your goal can happen?
Yeah, beautiful. 100%. And again, nobody is asking you to be somebody you're not. We are just asking you to make room at the table for those who are not like you.
Yeah.
To be able to do it in a harmonious way where we all, and then you learn about others. And guess what? Usually when we learn about others and we humanize them, they can actually become friends. And I don't know that we realize that just because you have a faith system or your sexuality or your gender or your education level or your strength, whatever it might be, whatever makes up who you are, that's valuable. But it's also valuable in the other. And we can have perspectives and still have common ground. And I don't know why. I think for me, the enemy, I think, of society right now is dualistic thinking.
For fucking sure.
That it's either or. Mm-hmm. Either you're this or you're that. And I know sometimes in Christian circles it's hot or cold. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. That is just, first of all, it's total, it's read, if you're going to go with the Bible, you're not reading the Bible right, all right? Because there is so much both and when it comes to all of that. I can be fully this and fully that at the same time. Or you
can still be aware of somebody's background and context and identity and still have to do your job and still be able to apprehend an individual that needs to be, right? Like that, like this isn't all about, well, it goes from like violent situation to like we're sitting together. It may not happen that way, but it's still just information and it allows you to be more understanding and more non-emotional.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And if we're going to religion, and I know it's going to be a little dicey, but you can let me know if I need to stop. But like, even in terms of maybe having the dominant Christian culture and let's say an increasingly large population of Muslim Americans and maybe females who prefer to be veiled, to have the hijab, or even looking at Sikh communities, and that's the religion that I came out of, where men wear turbans. And it's what's fascinating is that even right after 9/11, in Phoenix specifically, a Indian man who was Sikh, his religion, and that's the religion where they wear the turban, he was gunned down because somebody thought that the turban automatically meant Muslim. And because of the situation with the pilots who were responsible for the terrorist acts, they happened to be Muslim. There was that crossing, right? Where now anybody who seems to be a group, we're going to gun down and kill. Even though, if you look at the culture, the history between people who are Sikh and people who are Muslim, there's actually a lot of contention. We know this with India and Pakistan, right? So all of this is happening. And we have all of these things that we make up about other people that aren't even true. But if we just came to recognize why a Muslim woman might choose to be veiled, we may not understand Islam. We may not understand Sikhism. But there is a very holy and real reason for why a Muslim woman might choose to veil and why a Sikh man might choose to wear a turban. And that those are holy things to them. It might not be holy to me.
Like non-negotiables is what she's saying.
Non-negotiable. And so if we are in an altercation and we demand somebody to take off their hijab or demand somebody to take off their turban.
Now you understand the response.
We've got a problem. Now we have violated their intrinsic
Well, and you're creating a problem that doesn't need to exist, right? So now you're understanding, oh, this is where things could have been different. Do I need to do that? No.
Yes. Did I need to require that? Did I need to escalate that? So just learning about the why. Yeah. Behind why people do things. I would venture to say that if you asked 5 veiled women not why they wear the hijab, but what does the hijab mean to them, you're going to get really unique and personal answers, because we have made this representation, we have made it an ideology, and we have forgotten the human behind the veil, behind the turban. We've forgotten that. Yeah. And let's rehumanize who we are in society. Let's recognize that I can maintain my Christianity and still value the hijab that this woman who is not a Christian wears. And we can I don't have to necessarily wear it. I don't even necessarily have to agree with it. But I should take time to understand it.
Also, you can stop caring. This goes back to that personal, make your experience better. When you realize that it's not something threatening and that it has nothing to do with you, this gives you that freedom to kind of back off. So you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this little free, this free resource. You guys know that I'm committed to giving you annual, year-long free resources. And if your department is interested at all in chatting with Renee, please do. Like I said, she's the founder and trainer at Culturally Intelligent Training and Consulting. She's located here in Arizona. This is good shit, you guys. It's all very new, and I promise you that with all the information that I give you, this is where the support is crucial to you learning this stuff, and we're just going to take little baby steps. We're just going to learn shit.
Yes.
We're just going to learn.
Absolutely. And everything right now is available over Zoom, and it's customizable. So if you don't want to talk about this yet, we don't have to talk about it yet, but I will listen to you first to find out what you need and what you want. Yeah. And work together to build it, because part of all of this is being uncomfortable and pushing past our discomfort, and being uncomfortable is okay. It's a great place to start. But at the same time, I don't want to push somewhere that doesn't need to be pushed quite yet. And so recognize that too, that we together in this, and we use the lens of compassion, because compassion is action. We take action.
I like that. Compassion is action. You hear that? She just flipped that around in a way that you could hear it. See? This is not a sissy lala thing. Compassion is action.
It's action. If it doesn't have action connected to it, I don't know I don't want to touch it.
Compassion is action. I'm going to make a little picture of you and I'm going to post it. So send me one. All right, you guys. I will post all of the information, ways that you can contact Renee in the description of the podcast. And then thank you again so much for joining me for this morning conversation. It was very enlightening, very helpful. Okay. All right. Let's wrap up this conversation, you guys. Thank you so much, Renee. You were awesome. So good, dude. So good. If I had one of those, like, what are those, like the sound effects where the whole crowd is clapping and cheering? That's what I would be doing, because we are so freaking ready for information that we can fucking act on, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm excited to learn about how I can better understand people, better understand myself, and create some change. You know what I'm saying? So big thanks to Miss Renee Bhatti-Klug from Culturally Intelligent. You can check her out on the interwebs at culturallyintelligent.com. She's also on the social medias, so check her out. Yeah, she's a smarty pants. Don't forget to, I forgot to mention it earlier. Don't forget to sign up for, or not sign up, buy a raffle ticket. Buy a freaking raffle ticket. I'm raffling off a 5.56, an AR-15. I don't fucking know guns. An AR-15 upper lower build kit, 5.56 OEM. You just need a lower receiver, which those are super inexpensive. They're like $100. So you also get to choose the color of your Cerakote if you choose to. So that could be pretty dope. So that's included. I'm so excited. So you get a chance to win. Your chances are super good because I haven't sold a ton of tickets. And the proceeds of all of this is paying for the website. It's paying for getting the certification done through iAdalest. Like, y'all, takes dollars. Okay, so partner with me, join me, plus get something super sweet out of it. And again, if you need to get a hold of me, sorry about the website, be patient with me, but you can check me out at erica@tacmobility.net or any social media outlet. I'm there, I'm sure of it. Except for Snapchat. God damn it. All right, you guys, have a great freaking week. Don't forget to do some of the stretches. Join us Sunday at 9 a.m. Arizona time for like 15 minutes. That's it. Okay? I will see you guys later.